Breaking news, Washington Redskins receiver Pierre Garçon has filed a class action lawsuit in Maryland against Fanduel. Now, the complaint alleges that the players' names and likenesses have been misappropriated and that Fanduel knowingly and improperly exploits the popularity of players at offensive skilled positions without their permission. Competitor DraftKings allegedly was not sued because it was an advertising partner with the NFL Players Association, allowing them to actually use the players' images and their names. Back with me, attorney Ebony Williams and Stirk anchor Kirsten Hagelin and a sports fan and expert Jillian. Let me ask you from the legal point of view. I mean, this is a pretty fascinating thing. We know a lot of things are going to happen, from lawsuits to state and maybe national regulations, and maybe a revisit to the Supreme Court with this. But I didn't think about the actual individual players, getting involved. Yeah,
you know what it is, Charles? They're going to say that they're receiving harm, financial harm, because of all the enormous profits that come from this thing. And quite frankly, they want to take part in that harm. And if they can show that their image, their likelihood is adding to these millions of dollars being made and they're not sharing in the profits, that's harm. The problem is he's going to have a tough time because he was tweeting about these very issues. And it's going to come back to bite him and say, hey, you're saying you had no awareness and you didn't approve it, but yet you were tweeting. So he's going to have to make a case around that.
Well, okay. I would assume that every player knows that somehow, particularly the offensive players, they pick them, they rank them, that they're involved. But Jillian, by the same token, it sort of reminds me of the video game stuff, too, right?
Yeah.
The covers of these games. And I know some of those occasionally went to the players, and then some, I lost track because they win, they lose, then they go back to court.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what's going on here really is that he smells blood and he's doing what football players do, which is pile on. We're already seeing the fantasy football industry.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah.
We're seeing the fantasy football industry already under increased pressure for regulation, concerns about gambling, concerns about insider trading. I think he sees this as an opportunity to get a quick buck out of it.
So, Kirsten, will there be a blitz by other players?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, no, you missed it. Come on now.
Did I miss it?
You're supposed to give me him.
All right, sorry. I fumbled that. No, I think you're exactly right, is that there's a lot of attention. Obviously, it came up in the Republican debate with Jeb Bush talking about this, and then Christie piling on again, there we go, and saying that, why are we talking about this? But it is really interesting, especially because it is an opportunity for more government tax and regulation. So we're going to see this come up more. But it is an issue, too, for those who do struggle with gambling. And there are people losing tens of thousands of dollars on this site, which FanDuel is a $1 billion company. I mean, it's bound to see a lot of problems.
And to that point, Ebony, a lot of folks are saying that the Supreme Court decision that made this possible didn't cover an entire year. In other words, the part that made it skill, that they sort of extrapolated that from the ruling, and it got their own interpretation of it. That's why I said, is it possible for this to eventually end up back in the Supreme Court?
I think absolutely, Charles. It's certainly what I would consider an incomplete ruling, and they're going to have to revisit it in a broader way, in a fuller scope. But I think you guys are giving these players a hard time. Why shouldn't they benefit? Everybody else is getting a huge chunk of earnings.
They definitely should.
Absolutely. Why shouldn't they get a piece of the pie?
Right. But Kirsten, you're saying, though, that there's an addiction aspect to this that perhaps everyone's exploiting.
Right, and that's why the government steps in and regulates here, and I think that a lot of Republicans at least say, well, let the states regulate it, which they are doing, but there should be, because there's a lot of people that have major problems, and that's why you see it with the lottery ads. It's why you see it if you ever walk into a casino. This is, if you have a gambling problem, you need help. So that needs to be emphasized, because there's a lot of very vulnerable people out there.
But Jillian, so far, none of this negative publicity has hurt these guys, right?
No, in fact, I think they just had their best weekend ever. But who this is really going to benefit, in my opinion, is DraftKings, the competitor, because they do have that licensing agreement.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. 3 sports experts. All right, I've got a ton of questions coming from you guys, particularly late in the day. I'm going to answer as many as possible. We had a great month, but we had some clunkers, too. Tweet me all your questions. I'm at CB Payne. We'll be right back.